Hi, folks. This will be the final welcome to the Laidlaw Leadership and Research Program Application Workshop. Please sign in with the QR code there. You'll see that we are recording, so this information session can go out, or this workshop rather, can go out to other folks who couldn't be here with us today. Before we get started, I'd like to say, introduce myself. My name is Stephanie Malik. I am the Senior Associate Director of Internship Programs and Special Initiatives here at Beyond Barnard. I'm joined by my colleague, Christine Valenza-Shin. She is Beyond Barnard's Executive Director. There she is waving. Hi, Christine. And the rest, there's a team dedicated to the Laidlaw program here on campus that also includes AJ Ehrenstein, our Assistant VP at Beyond Barnard, and two folks over at the Athena Center, Chris and Breen. So we're all here to answer your questions, but today, with regard to this application workshop, it is Christine and I here at Beyond Barnard who manage the application process. So before we get into the application specifics, and we are going to talk about research mentors as well as go through each of the application questions to give you some tips, tricks, guidelines, and some general thoughts about how to proceed with them in a way that is useful for your application. But before we do that, I do want to give you a quick rundown of the Laidlaw Foundation, what it is, what its values are, because these are important and will be something that will appear in the application questions themselves. So you can see here the Laidlaw Foundation, this is their mission statement. We invest in the education of the underprivileged and underrepresented in order to break the cycle of poverty, reduce inequality, and develop a new generation of leaders. This is a massive foundation. It's headquartered in the UK, and the representative or participant schools are located both on that side of the Atlantic Ocean as well as on this side. There are schools here in the US and in Canada that are represented. The goals with the Laidlaw Foundation and its scholarship programs are to promote ethical leadership, develop a global network of undergraduate scholars. They want to address international challenges and foster intellectual research and community-focused learning. So you'll see here that these ideas of global impact, global importance, community-focused advocacy and learning, and ethical leadership and ethical models are very important to the foundation and are values that you will be asked about in the application itself. You can read more about the Laidlaw Foundation there at the link, certainly Googleable as well. When you're considering about applying to the Laidlaw program, we just wanted to offer here a quick rundown of what the actual commitment looks like. And it is a commitment of 2 years. You'll see that we're in the spring semester currently. After you are admitted to the program, after you finish the application or are admitted, hoping everything goes well, there will be an orientation and leadership retreat that will take place this semester. So even though the sort of nuts and bolts of your actual projects don't get started until the summer, you will have a commitment of orientation and leadership at the end of this semester. In the summertime, you will participate in 6 weeks of faculty mentored research between May and July, depending on schedules. That will culminate in a wonderful symposium at the end of the summer, beginning of the school year, where you'll get to share your research, not only with the other Laidlaw scholars, but also with other students and scholarly programs here on campus, as well as those additional folks that are invited. You know, and if you've checked out the application already, you'll see that you need to have approached and spoken to a faculty mentor, and we'll talk about that here in a minute, but this is who that refers to here. In the fall, we'll also participate in the conference that the Laidlaw Foundation puts on, and that's something that students, scholars, participants from other schools attend as well. It's a really wonderful event. So that carries us through the summer, this potential summer, fall 2024. You'll spend the end of fall 2024 and spring 2025 preparing for your second summer's activity, which is a Leadership in Action project, or LEA for short. Another 6 weeks where you'll dedicate your time at an external site somewhere outside Barnard or Columbia, where you'll develop leadership, project management, advocacy skills, everything more or less that will be discussed in your application. And we'll work with you on preparing or developing yourself, your skills, your project for that particular summer. And it's something that will figure into the application itself. So besides those 2 summers, we do want you to be mindful of the other commitments that are a part of the Laidlaw program during the school year. You'll certainly have lots of supportive programming, cohort-based activities, workshops hosted by the Athena Center, preparation for the conference and symposium. You will take part in an ethical leadership certificate program, something that is put on by the Laidlaw Foundation, as well as participation in something called the Laidlaw Scholars Community. It's actually something you can Google and look up to see what current Laidlaw scholars are researching and what their leadership projects are about. So here's a quick agenda of what we will run through. So first, we will start with research and mentors. So for the first summer, the idea is that you need to pursue a research project. So ask yourself some questions first as you're preparing this application. What do you want to know and why do you want to know it? What is a research question that interests you? It doesn't need to be something you've researched before. It doesn't need to be something you're taking classes about right now, though it very well could be. Why does it interest you? And furthermore, particularly with regard to the way the Laidlaw Foundation is interested in community advocacy. Looks like some folks need to mute themselves if you could. Ask yourself why it matters. Ask yourself, forgive me, ask yourself why does it matter to the community around you? So this particular research question can't just be focused on you. It needs to be something that will have an impact. An important part of the research project over the summer as well is understanding the contours of a contained period. 6 weeks is something that you will dedicate. You'll spend 6 weeks of your time with this project, working with this faculty member. So when you're talking about your research project and the application, we recommend that you're mindful of what can be contained within a 6-week period. We'll talk briefly about who might support and mentor your work here. Again, looking at these questions of whether or not you've engaged in this research previously, it's not a requirement, but if it has been, that could be something that we recommend you speak about in the application itself. And importantly, I think, and lastly, why do you want to do this particular work as a Laidlaw scholar? Because research projects can be undertaken in the classroom and outside the classroom through a variety of other internships or ways to be a researcher on campus or outside campus. But what is it about the Laidlaw program? Again, those values that we just highlighted earlier: community impact, global relevance, ethical leadership. Why does this research project promote those values for you as a potential Laidlaw scholar? So once you've started to hone in a little bit on your research project, we want to walk you through what it could be like to find your potential mentor. And we'll say off the bat that you do not have to have a mentor finalized and fully committed to you at the time of application. You do need to have approached some folks, some Barnard or Columbia faculty, and be able to list their names and their departments. So we want to see that you've done some legwork here, but you do not have to have it finalized. So how might you go about that? On your own, you can collect a list of faculty members whose research interests you. We also have on the website, maybe Christine can pop it into the chat, the list of faculty that have demonstrated to us that they are interested in mentoring a 2024 Laidlaw scholar. You'll also find on our website a list of faculty members who have already mentored a Laidlaw scholar. So that means they're familiar with the program and the process and could potentially be excited to work with you. That's not the entirety of who might be interested, though. So definitely consider reaching out to faculty who might not be on those lists, and you might have already. And the way to do that is to think about where their research and their teaching interests overlap with your research project. So certainly that includes reading their bios on their faculty websites, looking at their scholarship, thinking about both course descriptions, bibliography, materials that they use, looking at their publications, that are available, of course, to you through the library, and in reading through their CVs to get a sense of what other projects they might be pursuing outside of campus. If you're still not sure, want to run through some ideas, you can always talk to us here at Beyond Barnard. Talk to peers, other folks that you know that are applying, or other faculty members. Mentors do need to be full-time faculty. If you're not sure about what that might mean, by all means, email us. But if on the whole, if a faculty member is adjunct or has that in their title, that means that they're not eligible. So how do you chat with a potential member, potential mentor, if that's not something that you've done yet? We very much recommend that you email them to request an in-person meeting. Zoom, of course, works as well. You could solicit their mentorship over email, but particularly given the closeness with which you'll work with this faculty member, we really think speaking to them in person is the best idea. Ask them about their work, present your interests, tell them why you're so excited about Laidlaw. Offer them information about Laidlaw that's on our website. You could send them the application itself. And talk to them about how you envision yourself as a researcher during the 6 weeks, the 6-week period over the summer. I'm sure they'll likely want to hear about why you're excited about the Laidlaw program as a whole, but their role will be confined to the summer and then the symposium when you present your research at the end of the summer, beginning of the fall semester. Talk to them about why the process of research excites you, whether it's brand new to you or something that you've participated in before. Let them in on what makes you excited about it. Talk a bit about what you'd like to learn. You can certainly present your interests and what you do know, but come to it from a place of curiosity and ask them about what it might look like to learn under their auspices in this particular time period. What about working with them will help you define your academic pathway? How might this impact what you are studying or might like to study, or how might it help you explore what you could study? And lastly, you can always emphasize how you can be there to support their work as well. If they have an existing research project that you're really keen on and really love to learn more about, you can come to that conversation with elements of support, ways in which you think that you could be a part of their project. If these potential mentors have questions about the format, logistics, or just like some additional clarification on Laidlaw after you've shared everything with them, by all means, let them know that they can get in touch with us here at Beyond Barnard. With me, Stephanie, with Christine, and certainly they can email laidlaw@barnard.edu. These emails we will definitely share in the chat as well. So after I make this explain this last slide here on making a request about research and mentors, I will go to the chat and to Christine as well to see if we can answer any research or mentor specific questions. So if you are in the position where you feel like you found someone who might be a great match for you and you'd like to officially ask them to be your mentor, provided that you are accepted into the Laidlaw program, here are some tips. Maybe this is a conversation you're super excited to have. Maybe it's the first time you've asked for this sort of thing. So we recommend just being direct. Just ask them plainly if they want to serve as your mentor. Explain why it would be so meaningful to you. Why are they such a good match for you? What about their research and interests overlays what you're interested in? I think in particular indicating how their mentorship will be helpful to you, because we do call them research mentors for a reason. They're meant to be in this role where they can guide you through the research process as well as the research content. If a research mentor does say no, this is not a moment to take something personally. Just accept it and understand that their schedules are busy, and that, as we know, faculty are just so pressed for time. And it's not an indication of your interest or the likelihood of your project having success, that they likely just can't commit the time. And then move on to your next candidate. It's really recommended that you get a couple different folks set up that you think you could work with, and then decide who you think would work best and move from there. Christine, do you have anything to add?
I would just go back to that first point. They don't need to be the perfect match, but why are they a strong match? Why are they a good match for you? So we don't want to put too much pressure on them or you to be perfect.
That's a very good point. No such thing as perfection.
And I guess I would also add that this is, even if this is new to you, this is a completely normal thing that professors are asked all the time, not necessarily about Laidlaw, but about working with them on their research. So they should be used to this. They may or may not be super familiar with Laidlaw. And as Stephanie said, we're happy to give them more information and answer any specific questions they have for us. But just know that this is a normal thing to ask for, and go for it.
Yeah, and the same is true for recommenders as well, as sometimes it can feel a little daunting to ask someone to speak on your behalf, but everyone got to where they are today by also asking these same questions to their former mentors, faculty, etc. So it's not new. It's absolutely not new for them. So now we're going to go ahead.
Sorry, just what Gab, I had a question sent to me directly. I just want to make sure I answer it correctly. It's a professor is listed as an associate professor on the website. That's fine. Yes.
Yes. Assistant professor, associate professor, and professor are all eligible. It's just that adjunct title. If you have a question about anything, like we said, just get in touch with us, certainly, to be clear on it first.
And one more question just popped up, which is, can my Laidlaw mentor also write my recommendation letter? Yes, but they don't have to. So if your Laidlaw mentor, the person you're considering, happens to know you well, has taught you and can speak to your candidacy, that would be great. Otherwise, you should choose somebody who's taught you directly in a class, if possible.
Great. All right, let's get to the application questions. So this first line here is absolutely drawn directly from the application. You've already looked at it and are drafting it, then it won't be new to you. If you haven't, then welcome. So we're looking for about 500 words. Describe the question or questions that you would most like to research, what you hope to learn in addressing this research question, and how you would envision pursuing this research. So we've added some guiding questions here to help you think through how you might approach this. And I'll echo what Christine said about perfection. It doesn't need to be a research question that you've articulated in the way that you could write a dissertation about it. We want to see that you're thinking clearly and cleanly and openly about what interests you. So some ways to guide that. What is it that you want to ask? What cause or interest or passion is speaking to you, and why do you want to pursue research about it? Not only why you are interested in it, we mentioned this at the beginning, but why others might be interested in it. Effectively, why does it matter? How does it impact the community you're interested in researching? And what kind of extenuating effects might that have beyond the community? An important point here is how this question will be explored in that maximum of 6 weeks during this first summer. So questions along the lines of, what is the concept of time, for example? That's kind of far-reaching, but you can imagine that that would be a very tricky question to answer. In fact, I'm sure some of the world's greatest scholars have not been able to answer that in 6 weeks. So think, and you can speak certainly to a potential research mentor about what a research project that is completed within 6 weeks might actually look like. Who might support your work? Who might support and mentor your work, right? This goes hand in hand with finding a research mentor, but ensuring that your research is something that can be grounded and connected to research that's being done on either our campus or Columbia's is important, because the point of this research question is that you have some scaffolding around it to ensure that you are guided throughout the process. Engaging in the research previously, as we've said, absolutely not necessary, but if you have, talk to us about it. Tell us why it was of interest to you then and why it continues to be of interest to you now. I think one of the absolute greatest ways to get a sense of research projects of our current Laidlaw scholars is to go to the mailroom and see all of the posters that are lined up on the wall there. You can see there are 25, and the projects range from literature to social sciences to exploration of the history of oyster farming on Long Island. There's just a whole host of different topics that really run the gamut. So I think it's a really great way if you're sort of feeling kind of stumped about how to narrow down something that you're interested in, is to go take a look at those posters, and you'll get to see what the summer research symposium will look like for you. Those posters are created at the end of your first summer, and then we have that large symposium, excuse me, at the beginning of the year where you get to present your research, and part of that would be creating that poster and gathering together to talk about it. So in this first question, and this holds true for all the application questions, but we want to see why you feel like you are a strong fit with regard to this research program for Laidlaw. Pursuing research is wonderful on its own, but why is this a research question that you want to ask by way of the Laidlaw program? What will the Laidlaw program offer, and what values of the Laidlaw program do you think speak to your research question? And lastly there, if you are interested in an existing project, something that a faculty mentor is already undertaking, by all means, let us know, and let us know which faculty are attached to it. Again, not a requirement. Please do not feel any kind of pressure for that to be the avenue. Novel research questions are just as welcome as ones that you have potentially sourced elsewhere. But be sure too that if there is an existing project, that you express to us why you're keen on it and what sort of new interventions, what new avenues you might take in pursuing learning more about it. Any questions there about research before we move on to the next summer? Are novel research questions preferred over joining an existing project? Not at all. There is not a preference one way or the other. It's only to say that you have both options and that neither are off limits. I see a direct question there. Any mentor must be a full-time faculty member at Barnard or Columbia's campuses.
Sorry, we had somebody who's just a brand new transfer student this semester. So I had answered that in that situation, they could ask for a recommendation from their prior institution, but we can confer on that afterwards and get back to them. I don't want to be contradictory, but sometimes different variations on this.
Yeah, and welcome transfer students. We're very happy to see that you're excited about the program. I see another question regarding can mentors mentor more than one student? The answer to that is yes. There is a limit, but let the mentor know to get in touch with us and we can chat with them about it. Okay, we'll move forward. Of course, there's time for questions at the end about research or anything else. So your research interest in your project is confined to the first summer 2024 it would be, and your second summer, which you'll spend the school year 2024-2025 preparing for, is what we are going to talk about now, which is the Leadership in Action project. This is a 6-week opportunity for you to practice leadership skills on the ground or in the field while supporting an underserved international community during the second summer of your Laidlaw tenure. So the LEA is something, just like the research project, that all Laidlaw scholars across all institutions take part in. So when you're thinking about answering the questions in the application about leadership and about your second summer, think really acutely about how you imagine yourself engaging with the community, locally or internationally, in the second summer. So think about it in a really community-based way. And secondarily, think about the way in which the work that you would do might resonate globally or connect with larger scale challenges of international importance. A key feature of the Laidlaw program is that there is an international consideration or aspect to the work that is done in the second summer in the Leadership in Action project. And we'll talk about what international can mean. So the application question drawn from the application itself, describe what you intend to do in your second summer as a Laidlaw scholar. Here, 500 words maximum. Remember two important items as you compose your response. The first is this on-the-ground independent project component, which is to say that the second summer takes you out of the lab, the library, the archive. It takes you out of the research mindset and it puts you on the ground. So you're meant to complete the research, feel empowered by it, get you thinking about ways to be an effective and also ethical leader. So participating in the second summer requires definitely some independence, go-get-em type attitude. You'll receive a lot of support in developing your project for the second summer, though we just want to see at the application stage what you think this might look like for you. Your LIA, Leadership in Action project, will either be a program that is supported by the Laidlaw network itself. There are some sort of prefab programs that students have participated in that they really enjoy. Some are here in the US, others are in Peru, Mexico, Colombia, Uganda. They range, there's a lot of places. Or you can pursue an independent project based on a proposal that you draw up yourself, where you have to be working with an NGO or a nonprofit. So in order to think about what that might mean to you, ask yourself what causes you're passionate about and what NGOs or nonprofits exist already that address them. During this project, this LIA, you do need to be associated with an NGO or a nonprofit. It can't be something you do completely siloed outside of the contours of an existing organization. Think about how you'll transfer what you learned as a researcher during that first summer into the field. And keeping in mind that you're not performing research, quote unquote, on the ground or in the field. You're inspired by what you learned and moving that forward in a way where you are active in a community. How will you exercise independence? And we mean here as independent thinker, independent student, independent organizer. You'll receive a lot of support from us leading up to the LIA, as well as during your 6 weeks during the second summer. But it's important to think about how you'll be interacting with the organization, how you'll be promoting your interests and supporting theirs. In response to this part of the question as well, you can think about what sort of project management experience you might have. And if you don't have any, that's perfectly fine. How do you want to develop it? And that doesn't need to, we don't mean here that you need to talk about project management software at all, but just the idea of how do you approach managing projects from a perspective where you need to be somewhat entrepreneurial and excited about moving the needle forward on a project that you really are managing and in control of. So the two features that we're asking you to keep in mind when you're answering this question, the first is this on-the-ground aspect. The second is thinking about the ways that it engages you on a global level. As we know, global engagement is an important component of the Laidlaw program. So ask yourself and fold into your answer how you imagine yourself engaging with an international community. And that can be locally or internationally. And by I mean locally, it doesn't necessarily mean locally here to New York. It means here to the US or going abroad to another country. We have many of our students go to other countries. There are some that engage with international communities here in the US as well. And that's also a wonderful way to pursue the LIA. Think about how the work that you might do will resonate on a larger scale that includes these kinds of international components. So if you plan to travel elsewhere, please let us know, chat about that. If you're not going to travel, again, just explain how this particular work you're interested in will be relevant to international communities here in the US. Because global engagement is such a feature of the Laidlaw program, talk to us about why it's important to you. Why is having an impact in this particular community of interest and importance to you? And what does it mean? How does it inform you as a student and as a potential Laidlaw scholar? I'm looking here in the chat. Yes, if we can walk through funding. Funding is provided through the first and second summer. And the website where we can see organizations that Laidlaw works with as a part of the prefab programs, absolutely. The Laidlaw Scholars Network is something that you will have access to, even though you can't sign in. You should be able to see the, I'll add the website there towards the end, but you should be able to see the organizations that are already a part of the Laidlaw program. There's 5 this year. And that might change in the coming years, but it could give you a sense of what's available now. So in relation to the second summer, we're going to talk now about what leadership means to you, both with regard to the application question that we just discussed, but there's also another application question about the concept of leadership. So we ask you in 500 words to discuss some of the ways you define the word leadership. Please certainly avoid giving us a stock definition that you find from Merriam-Webster or elsewhere. We want to see what leadership is according to you, according to your experiences, according to your passions, according to what you think your future might hold. So what does being a leader mean? What strengths and skills have you developed already as a leader? And what would you like to develop as you continue to mature, but specifically as you develop as a Laidlaw scholar in the program? Again, what about the Laidlaw program is really fertile ground for you to figure out the kind of leader that you want to be? I think a great question to consider is, what sort of leadership skills do you admire? Think about folks in your life or in culture at large that you think are wonderful leaders. What kind of qualities do they have? And why might those be something that you want to pursue? And lastly, there's certainly something we've already talked about, but how does the Laidlaw program help promote your interests and your skills with regard to leadership? At the end of the day, when answering these application questions, it's really important to think about what it means to be a leader, to pursue research, to develop an on-the-ground leadership project. But ensure that you're always thinking about them with regard to the Laidlaw program. What is it about the program that interests you? And talk about how you can imagine yourself as a Laidlaw scholar.
I'll jump in for just a second.
Yes.
I want to add to that. This is a good thing to sort of know about applications in general, whether they're for a program like this or eventually graduate school. Tell us what you're thinking about now. No one's going to hold you to it. But as you anticipate your leadership and action project, what are you thinking? That's what we want to know. If that evolves and changes over the first summer and over next year, that's expected that it might evolve, and we'll ask you to check in with us as things change. But and then similarly, as you talk about how Laidlaw might fit into your future and leadership might fit into your future professional goals, again, tell us what you're thinking about now. What are you currently envisioning, and how does this fit in? And don't worry too much that you have to have a very specific, definite plan for your career and for your future. If you do, great. If you don't let that keep you from applying or from talking about this in a holistic way.
That's the point of being in college to begin with, is to ask yourself questions and figure out what might change for you. Laidlaw program is meant to promote your intellectual growth. So change is certainly a part of that. So we've talked briefly about the recommendation. We talked already about the mentor. It's a component of the application in addition to the essays. The recommendation, this person does not have to be your proposed research mentor. It could be, but absolutely isn't a requirement. Ask someone that knows you well. Ask them in person, ask early, do it now if you haven't already. Share information with them about Laidlaw, encourage them to be in touch with us, they always can. We definitely recommend sharing your draft application materials. This way they can get a sense of seeing how you envision yourself as a Laidlaw scholar, which can very much inform how they talk about you. It's always great to get recommendations from folks that have a strong sense of what the program is. We recommend 2 weeks in advance there, but certainly the earlier the better. We've already said, oh, forgive me, this is actually, I shouldn't have this on this slide. But with regard to mentors, right, there's a list already, but there's no list of existing recommenders because those are folks that should know you personally. It does not need to be a faculty member. It could be someone from another area of your life that can speak to you, speak to your academic self, that can speak to you in a professional way, that understands what you're like inside and outside of a classroom. This is really your chance to get someone to speak on your behalf who knows you in a way that you feel is special and would be helpful for you. In the application itself, there is a hyperlink that you send directly to the recommender. And they have until February 8th at 5 p.m., which is the new extended deadline for the applications themselves that are due, but also your recommenders a letter or them filling out the form is also this new deadline of February 8th at 5 p.m. So as it states in the application, you do need to send that link directly to them, and that's how we collect your recommendations. It's not something that we will reach out to them for. Questions about recommendations? I don't see any as of yet. Next component, your resume and your transcript. When it comes to resumes, it's certainly beyond Barnard general recommendation that every resume is tailored to the opportunity that you're applying for, whether that's a job or an internship or a scholarly program. We highly recommend that you schedule an appointment with a peer career advisor, a PCA here at Beyond Barnard to review your resume. There are loads of resources in Handshake and on our YouTube about best practices for resumes. Ensure that it is tailored to the Laidlaw program. So think about what Laidlaw is looking for: research, leadership, community engagement. So you could even think about parceling out the resume itself with those particular sections and those section headers. Not exactly, but we're trying to give you a guideline here. A really strong resumes can look all different ways for different kinds of positions, but the strongest ones are curated for the position to which you are applying. So the resume that you submit to us for consideration for the Laidlaw program should be your Laidlaw specific resume. And please, please, we hope you really take this to heart. Do not let some perception of not having good enough grades dissuade you from applying. That we would much rather you apply. A recommendation is apply. Come to us with questions. We're happy to support you through the application process. Don't fret about your transcript. And if you're new, if you're in your first year, certainly you're familiar with Handshake, which is how you got here. But you can schedule appointments with PCAs and with Barnard staff through Handshake as well to review your resume. I see a question here about including high school experiences on your resume. Definitely a great question for a PCA or an advising session. But certainly if you're a first year, it is normal for high school experiences to appear on a resume. You've only been in college for a semester. Our general recommendation is, as you're moving through your sophomore year, that you start to drop high school experiences. But this program, the folks that are eligible for Laidlaw are in their first and second year, so first years and sophomores.
I'll just add that the curate is the key word here. So look back on your high school experiences and focus in and include those that are most relevant to Laidlaw. So leadership experiences, and it doesn't have to be every single one, but the leadership experiences, the community engagement, the research experiences that sort of make the most sense within the Laidlaw context.
Okay, so here is your timeline. Today is this application workshop, of course. After you've taken these tips and tricks into consideration, we are going to have a drop-in advising a couple of hours this Friday on January 6th at the Beyond Barnard office, Elliott Hall, second floor. You can bring drafts of your essays with you to talk to us about. We're not going to be there in an editorial capacity. We are there to advise you about how better to not format, but how better to consider the ways in which your essay answers the application questions themselves. As you know, we have a new deadline of February 8th is when the application closes. The recommenders are also due, the recommendations are also due at that deadline. By late February, a select number of students will be invited to interview. By March 8th, you'll be notified of the decision, whether you're accepted, waitlisted, or declined. And you have until March 18th, which is just after spring break, to accept or decline the offer. And then, as we mentioned, there will be orientation and preparation for summer research, including our leadership retreat that will kick off in April and May. And then you'll be on your way to your first summer and your research project, summer 2024. You'll see there that the research projects that you pursue with your mentor will also be supported by weekly required cohort meetings, cohort being your Laidlaw cohort, the 25 of you that will be accepted. You'll meet weekly with us for lunch and to talk about the way that your research project is going. So those are the main deadlines I think that we need to share with you. Please do ensure that your application is submitted on time. We will not be accepting any late applications. We'll continue to take questions. Please do sign in here at the QR code. I'll ask Christine if she has anything further that she would like to add.
In general, or should I recap some of the questions that came to me directly?
Go ahead and recap the questions. I think that'd be good.
Great. Okay, so I got one question about talking to potential mentors and how do you address that we're talking to a few, more than one without being rude or feeling like you're wasting people's time. So, and then there's a little bit of a management question about not hearing back from somebody. So it's a little bit tricky. We're happy to walk it through with you during the drop-ins if you've got specifics. But generally speaking, it's fine to add a sentence that maybe towards the end that says, so you've reached out, or in your conversation, you let them know that you're interested in their research. And then you can just mention that, the program recommends that I reach out to more than one faculty member, just wanted to let you know that. And that way that lets them, sort of know, and you kind of set them up for the possibility. In the specific example where a professor responded enthusiastically, but now hasn't gotten back about a specific meeting, you could definitely email back. From the question, it sounds like it's been a week since they've gotten back to you. You could definitely reach out, check when their office hours. And so sometimes it's helpful to say, I asked about meeting you. I'm going to go ahead and drop in on your office hours if that's okay. As I need to, be able to ask additional people if you're not going to, be able to supervise this. So, but it can be a little tricky, the sort of dance of, asking more than one person, and then what if they all say yes, and etc. So we're happy to talk that through with you. And then there was another one. So I think we might have inadvertently given conflicting information about whether the recommender needs to be a faculty member as well. my understanding is we prefer it to be a faculty member, a Barnard or Columbia instructor who's taught you over the last semester or, 3 semesters, depending on how long you've been here. We'd rather hear from a college professor, even if they don't necessarily know you as well as a high school teacher, just because we want them to speak to, how you've been doing in college so far. But as I said, if you are, if you just transferred this semester and haven't completed a course with anybody here, then we, definitely consider taking a recommender from somewhere else. But if I have that wrong, Stephanie, because I think you had said maybe somebody from outside the classroom could also be okay.
Yeah, the information on our Laidlaw website here at Barnard states that it can be someone from outside the classroom per se. It doesn't have to be a Barnard or Columbia faculty member.
Okay.
However, as Christine said, that is our strong preference, as this is a very academically driven program. You would be a Laidlaw scholar. Sourcing the opinion and recommendation for faculty members definitely it would be recommended. But if you have a circumstance where you do feel like someone else could speak to you, and if you want to talk about what that could mean, you can email us as well or come to Drop-In Advising. But I think the idea is that we understand there could be circumstances where another person might better fit the job. Does that make sense to everybody?
Just got another question. Can we get recommendations from teaching assistants? I would say yes. If you're part of it, so teaching assistants are generally like sort of a smaller group setting within a larger course, and they're doing more of the direct grading. I think that would probably be.
Yeah. You have, I think effectively what this might be coming down to is that there's one recommendation. So just I think intentionally and critically about who might be the best person for that, given the stipulations of this program and everything that we're talking about today.
And then I got another direct question about a professor who is going to write the recommendation highlighting interest, values, and how I shaped the class. That's fine. The recommender doesn't need to specifically address Laidlaw. We're asking for them to tell us how they know you and what they see as your strengths. And so if they focus primarily on your academic performance and not necessarily on leadership qualities, for instance, just because Laidlaw follows leadership, that's fine.
Yeah, I think the idea there is certainly to tell your recommender why you're so excited about Laidlaw. What could Laidlaw mean for you, right? And then they can talk about that by way of how they know you and how they've seen you perform. Anything else? We're coming up here on the hour. So Christine,
sorry.
Go.
I got just another question came in. Do we have to be here during the May interim? Yes, sorry, I'm blanking on the language. There's a 2-day leadership immersive prior.
The retreat.
The retreat. That's going to take place either the Monday, Tuesday of that interim week or the Thursday, Friday. We'll make a decision on that very soon and before you accept. And you need to be here for that. And you'll get interim housing, and interim housing stipulates that you need to, be here during that week to be able to check in as well. So, so if you have specific questions within that week, but in general, you should plan to be here during the interim week, and you have to be here for that 2-day leadership retreat. So.
And to emphasize as well, you do need to be on campus for the research project.
And your housing is paid for.
Yes.
For those 6 weeks, and plus the interim week, if you're here, if you're in housing. Additional questions?
Anything else? And so Christine and I will be hosting these drop-in advising hours, right, this Friday from 2 to 4, Elliott Hall, second floor. This recording will be circulated certainly to you after probably sometime tomorrow after we get it uploaded to YouTube, where you can have access to it for as long as you like. But please don't hesitate to be in touch with us if you have questions about the application process. Don't worry that if you come to us with a question that might seem like it will reveal something about your application. We'd rather you be in touch now than later.
And just, there's one more question about when the program begins. I just want to make sure I'm saying the right dates. So the leadership retreat will either be the 13th and the 14th or the 16th and the 17th. So, but either way, you should plan on being here during the full interim session, but we will get back to you on the specifics of that. So just hold on to that, continue to apply, email us if you have a very specific circumstance that week, and we'll let you know very soon.
I see one last question about living expenses for this summer. So you get $4,000 plus housing. And so that the way that you manage that is up to you.
The housing goes directly to Barnard to pay for on-campus housing. I think we only had one exception to that last year. So yeah. Closing words. Really excited to see how many of you are interested and excited about applying. Do apply, push through. Come see us on Friday. Yes. And I just want to reiterate what Stephanie said. I want to manage expectations. We are not going to be able to do a close reading of your application, partly because we'll be the ones reviewing it and partly because there's just not time, but we're happy to answer specific questions about your application and to sort of talk through your general reasoning, give you a few little little tips from there, but we can't go over individual answers to individual questions in that session.
And I've put there in the chat the email that that contacts all of the Laidlaw team here at Barnard. That includes Christine and me, laidlaw@barnard.edu. You can certainly email either of us directly as well, but that Laidlaw email there is the best way to get an efficient answer. Okay, I think that is it from me and from Christine. We look forward to your applications. And if we haven't said it already, please do be in touch if you have questions. All right, goodbye, folks. Good luck, and we'll see you soon.